Hey, my friends, it's Mrs. Love. You're getting this recording because I am out this morning and I don't want you to miss the lesson. So please listen to the recording. Then you can go to your online school and grab either, if you need the lesson slides, I'll have them in there. And then you're going to find our graded assignment in there as well. But that will be at the end of the lesson. So today we're doing Unit 11, Lesson 4. This is Chapter 43 in your book. If you have not read it yet, you should get that reading done right away. This is just a question for you to think about. What do you think these two presidents have in common, if anything? Just think about that to yourself for a moment. If you want to pause the video, you can and come on back. So today we're going to be talking about John F. Kennedy as a president, and we're going to talk about his programs called the New Frontier, and then we're going to talk about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. If you want to pause the video, you won't be able to do this like we would in the classroom, but you could mentally do it. Take a couple minutes and see if you can match the picture with the description. Pause the video, go through each one, and then come back to check and see if you have them correct. Okay, so the first picture is the I Have a Dream, the March on Washington. The second picture is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The third picture is a picture of JFK, and then this one may have been difficult for you, but this one is Fidel Castro and Nikita Khrushchev. We're going to be learning about them. So if you got them all, give yourself some applause. Good job. All right, so just follow along with me as we go through this slide here. The presidency of John F. Kennedy. He is often just referred to as JFK. JFK's presidency is often referred to as Camelot because of the uniqueness of him and what he was trying to accomplish as president. The word Camelot comes from a fictitious story about King Arthur. If you ever heard of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and the place that they lived was called Camelot, and it was sort of supposed to be like the most perfect world they could live in. But they use that as a synonym to describe Kennedy's presidency. But even though it maybe was seemingly perfect, he did have a lot of challenges, and we've learned about some of these, and some of these we're going to still learn about. But the Bay of Pigs invasion, Cuban Missile Crisis, managing violence in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, and then the Vietnam War. So those are just some of the challenges that he had. He also had many accomplishments. He's the first Roman Catholic to become president. As we learned in a previous lesson, he led people to public service and volunteerism, and he created not the Peach Corps, the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is a volunteer organization where people can go out in the world and help the needy. And finally, he helped to get the civil rights movement progressing. Okay, so just let's take a moment and answer this question to ourselves. How did most people in America feel about President Kennedy? Was it A, they didn't like him because he was too Catholic and foreign? B, they loved him and his family and followed them like superstars? Or C, they didn't care one way or another. He was okay, but nothing different than any others. Well, if you would have read the chapter in the book, you would know the answer to this is B. B. The Kennedys were like, that time period's Kardashians. Like everybody wanted to follow them around and hear what they were doing. Women wanted to dress like his wife. They wanted to wear their hair like she did. They wanted to know everything about them. So they were very, very popular. So as other presidents in the past, JFK had a plan for his presidency, and he referred to it as the New Frontier. Ooh, that's a word you're going to need to remember, so remember that one. The proposed plan would go beyond what FDR did in his New Deal program. So this is big. He planned to also pass a civil rights bill, a tax cut bill, and a health care bill. Those are familiar phrases we hear from lots of presidents. Whether or not they can actually do these things is a different story. But that's his plan. Other plans were to work on women's rights, minimum wage, and aid to inner cities and rural areas. Some people called his ideas socialism, and they didn't like them. Many conservative members of Congress opposed these changes. They didn't like all these government programs. And in some respects, that caused his popularity to fall. But his charisma helped to encourage young people, and he felt that his programs would succeed and that he would eventually get reelected for a second term in 1964. And here's a famous quote from him. If you want to pause the video and read it, go ahead and do that now. Okay, so let's see. I need to backtrack here because I paused my recording for a moment. So we were talking about the New Frontier. There's lots of information about this in your textbook. So President Kennedy, he spoke to the American people about what he called a new frontier that would go beyond FDR's New Deal. Kennedy had legislations that he wanted to pass, and I already explained those to you here. And at first he was frustrated because he couldn't get the things done that he really wanted. He thought people would want to go along with him, but he got frustrated because Congress would not go along. He thought he would have enough votes in Congress to pass his bills, and he thought he might need to win a second term as president to get everything done that he wanted to do. So he was looking forward to the 1964 presidential election. Okay, but something changed that. There was a visit. He and his wife made a visit to Texas. So as you know, presidents often go travel around the country and make appearances. And with the Kennedys being such a popular presidential family, they often traveled to greet Americans all over the United States. So, knowing that Texas was going to be an important state for him in the next election, he wanted to get out there and talk to people. He traveled to Texas to visit with some Democratic leaders and to calm disagreements they were having amongst them. Then, while he was on his way, his press secretary gets an anonymous note sent to him. And here's what it says. Don't let the president come to Dallas. Texas is too dangerous. But presidents often get threats like this. It's not unusual for somebody to send goofy messages like this. So they didn't really take it too seriously. So he goes ahead and visits Dallas, Texas on a beautiful day, and people from all over the city come out to see his motorcade as it traveled through the city. And here are some pictures of that day. This is Kennedy here, and this is his wife here, and some other dignitaries are in the car with them. This is a picture of them as they were greeted at the airport. Okay, November 22nd, 1963, a date that all Americans who were alive at that time remember. Here's a timeline. Just follow along with me as I read it. 11:03 a.m. they arrive in Dallas, Texas. Air Force One is the president's airplane. It lands at Love Field in Dallas, and the disembarking President Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy are met by the press and a crowd of Texans. And you can see here in this picture. At 11:45, the Kennedys joined Texas Governor John Connally, his wife Nellie, in an open-air limousine. Vice President Lyndon Johnson and his wife are riding in another limousine nearby. By noon, they travel through downtown Dallas, passing crowds estimated over 150,000 people lining the streets. It almost looked like a parade was happening, the way people came out to see him. At 11:29 in Dealey Plaza, the limo enters this area of the city, and Nellie Connally turned to the president and remarked, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." And I think she's referring to all the people who were standing there watching. At 12:30 p.m., a bullet strikes the president in the back while he waves, followed by a second shot to the back of his head. Another shot severely wounds the governor. A man in the crowd Abraham Zapruder happens to be filming this on his home movie camera because he was filming the motorcade. So they have it all on film that President Kennedy was shot. At 1:33 p.m., he is pronounced dead. The assistant White House press secretary announces the death of President Kennedy, and the press reports it on television in real time. By 2:47, just a little more than an hour later, Air Force One leaves Dallas and the plane approaches Washington, D.C. Mrs. Kennedy begins making funeral plans, and Johnson is speaking with advisors. This is the Vice President, Lyndon Johnson, this man right here. Mrs. Kennedy replies to his wife, Lady Bird Johnson, when she says she should change out of her blood-stained dress. Mrs. Kennedy says, "Oh no, that's all right. I want them to see what they have done to Jack." She referred to her husband as Jack. So President Kennedy is assassinated, and almost immediately Vice President Johnson is sworn in as the new President of the United States. All right, I have two little videos I want you to watch. You're going to need to grab the links from your email or from the online school, but please watch both of these. They're super short, number 1 and number 2. And then see if you can pause the video, go watch those other videos, and come back to this lesson video. Okay, shortly after this happens, let's go back. Dallas police capture a man named Lee Harvey Oswald at a movie theater after he had shot a policeman who noticed he was acting strange. There's a picture of this guy right here. Oswald, who was a guy who had lived in Russia and Cuba, was charged with the shooting of President Kennedy and Governor Connally, who was wounded. 2 days later, Oswald is shot and killed. As they're transferring him from one jail to another, a guy named Jack Ruby, who owns a nightclub in Dallas, shows up when this transfer between prisons is happening, and he shoots and kills Oswald. So the debate about whether others were involved in the assassination continues even to this day. Because the fact that the man who did it was immediately killed, nobody really ever knew what the motive was. It's very, very strange. And since then, lots of conspiracy theories have been investigated over the years. Okay, so we're going to stop right here. This is what your graded assignment is. You're going to complete these questions in the file document that I have in the online school. There's an assignment called Unit 11, Lesson 3, graded assignment. You're going to fill out this these questions. You're going to need your book for this. Go to chapter 43 in your book and find the answers. After you complete that, you're going to submit the file to your online school. Make sure you have read chapter 43. The study guide questions are actually our assignment, okay? I think I have the wrong numbers here. Yeah, I have the wrong numbers. It's Unit 11, Lesson... It's Unit 11, Lesson 4. My fault. That's wrong. So, Chapter 43, Unit 11, Lesson 4, graded assignment. Okay? If you get that done and you have some extra time before your next class, this is not right. This is not right at all. Ignore what I just said. Ignore what Mrs. Love just said. This is all we have for today. If you have questions, I will be back tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. See you guys tomorrow.